Well, we're so grateful to have each of you with us today, coming in from different parts of the country. Welcome to the Vining Center and to our second workshop in the Stress Proof series. The first one we had was a couple months ago that John Freeman and I taught in Greensboro on anxiety and the holy imagination. My goal is to get both of these recordings, that one and today's, up on our website in the next couple of weeks so that it's available for you to refer to or share with other people. If you're new to the Vining Center, let me just give you a quick thumbnail sketch. Kelly and I started this nonprofit a year ago. Our passion is to equip spiritual seekers with the tools for the contemplative spiritual life. And that's what we're working toward. We're brand new at this and figuring it out as we go. But our deep desire is to help people get closer to God, to their true self, to creation, build healthier relationships. This particular workshop series was just born out of the recognition that stress and anxiety are woven into the human condition. We don't have to try. These things, these dynamics find us. And yet we believe that while living in a world such as ours, these things can't be eliminated, but that we can learn with the right tools how to center ourselves and how to walk free from the oppression of anxiety and stress in our lives. So that seems like something worth working toward. And I expect that we'll have 2 more workshops over the course of this year. We're working on one called Emotionally Sensitive Spirituality, for folks who relate to that idea of being a highly sensitive person. And then as we get toward the holidays, we're going to have a session taught by a counselor on mentally healthy holidays, as that also can be a time that raises stress for many. So that's a few things that we've got coming up. And just before we begin, I wonder if I could invite us just to center ourselves now here in this space where we've gathered together, and grateful. Zoom isn't everything, but it gives us these kinds of opportunities to join our hearts together over the miles and really fellowship, have genuine fellowship together. So just let your mind, let the hard drive kind of spin down a little bit, let your hearts open. And I'm just going to offer this brief prayer from Saint Teresa. Let nothing upset you. Let nothing disturb you. Everything changes. God alone is unchanging. With God, all things are possible. The one who has God lacks nothing. God alone is enough. Amen. So as we turn our attention to today's workshop, I'd just like to introduce my friend and colleague, Kim Bunce, and just mention a few of the things that have brought her to this place in her journey. Kim's first career was in the field of special education for 38 years. So that's a real dedicated amount of time to invest in the learning needs of young people. After the death of several people close to her, she really felt called to come alongside people that are entering their final season of life, support that journey. This led her to training and certification as an end-of-life coach and doula, which I think she will explain more later. She studied with the Conscious Dying Institute and is also certified as an Enneagram instructor. She studied with many other programs you can read about in her bio, but what impresses me most about Kim and connects us on this journey is her commitment to the contemplative spiritual life. And I really do believe that is what we are all made for, is that kind of intimacy with God in our own hearts. If you have questions during the presentation, feel free to send those to me in a chat or just jot them down. At the end of our time together, we'll have a Q&A. So we want to take advantage of that. And I imagine the conversation will trigger thoughts and questions. And so just, make a note of that. And go ahead, if you haven't already, and mute your computer as we go into the presentation time. And then we can unmute when we get to the question and answer time. So Kim, I'll turn it over to you now.
Okay, thank you so much. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes, can.
Yes, okay, thank you. Okay, well, I'd just like to start by sharing just briefly about my calling and let you know what it is that I see is mine to do. And basically educate, which is something I've done all my life, is working in education, but I want to educate people around the topic of death and dying. I want to empower others with knowledge and options, because there is much to be known about death and dying and our living that we've hardly touched on in our society or our culture. I want to advocate for conscious style of living or being, so that each day you can live consciously into your death, no matter when that is and how far down the road that is, but to be consciously aware of how you are living so that you will find that in your dying as well. And I want to encourage people to see dying as a holy and sacred time. Medical advancements have made a huge impact on the way we view death and dying. And we basically see it as a medical experience, distanced and sanitized. And that's not the way that we have to move in this transitional time. We can view it and create a sacred and holy time. Another thing that our society has kind of instilled in us is that death is a failure, and the medical system is always working towards a cure for things, and that's a wonderful thing. But sometimes we just need to be in the moment, and we have to surrender. We need to surrender to that, that we are not immortal. So today I want to encourage us to have some courageous conversations. And we have to have them with ourselves first before we can even begin to have a conversation with someone else about what we want or what we need. So today we'll explore this kind of question and other questions together. So let me tell you just a little bit about what an end-of-life specialist does or is. And I will read the screen here for you for just a second. The heart of an end-of-life specialist is to be a companion. And that is my heart, is to be a companion to others. I do that by listening carefully, listening for nuggets that you might not even know are nuggets that you possess. I want to help you an end-of-life specialist will help you explore inwardly as to what your dreams and desires are that you may not be awake to in this moment. Want to help you seek clarification, to understand what it is you want and why you want it and why you need it and why it's important to you. An end-of-life specialist assists a person through the dying process, helping them to understand the different stages, what's going on with the body, what's going on in their mind or in their spirit, because it is a mystery. It feels like a mystery to us because it's something we've never done before. And I also, as an end-of-life specialist, want to be able to provide grief support for the family or friends, those that are connected with this dying person, those that are their loved ones. I'd like to, excuse me, like to tell you a little bit about what an end of life coach does. Okay, so this is just, I'm breaking it down into parts. So the umbrella is the end of life specialist, and so under the umbrella, I have two components that I work with as a certified coach and a certified doula. So as the coach, I create a safe and sacred space to explore and imagine one's thoughts around death and dying with dignity and completeness. So that may sound a little there may be some repetition there, but that's the main point, is to create that space for a person and to feel safe in order to share. I want to help people to begin to have that conversation with themselves. In order to do that, we need to alleviate some fears or discomforts that they might have or have been holding on to. An end-of-life coach will help someone with their life and death values. And these are connected with the five domains of life. And I'll talk about those in a moment, but I'm going to come back to those and explain those in just a minute. So let me continue on with telling you that I want to support you as a person in getting clear on what's most important and how these insights that you might discover might help change the way that you currently live. Will help you develop some or create some concrete action steps to help you move forward, to be in alignment with the way in which you want to live your life forward. And I would lastly want to invite you to envision dying with dignity and completion. Now, let me tell you just a little bit about those five domains of life, because those are the compass of the coach and the doula. So the five domains of life are, as we have learned in our teaching with the Conscious Dying Institute, where I've had my training, are the spiritual, emotional, mental, physical, and practical. And with the spiritual, I'm helping you to look at, is there anything from your background, maybe your religion or your spirituality, that is important to you that you incorporate into your daily life now, so that it is a part of your life, all the way through consistently, so that you are dying consciously in that practice. I want to help you to honor your feelings and relationships. So we could talk about, are there any things that you regret? Are there any things that you want to bring closure to? Are there any relationships that you need to pay special attention to? With the mental domain, this is like a life review. What have you done in your life? What is it that you're most proud of? We're gleaning for meaning and legacy. Legacy sometimes can be such a big word, but legacy is what impact have you had in others' lives. So it doesn't have to be that there's a monument built for you, but what is it that you've done that has impacted the people that have been closest to you or to your community? With the physical domain, I want to help to create comfort, safety, and healing. So that is bringing beauty, bringing in, is there music? Is there something that you really want to have to hear? Are there poems or different things? What are just some meaningful things to you? It might be some hard rock music. Who knows? Everybody has a different take on what's meaningful, and as a review of life, that brings them joy. Then the practical is creating completion. And so I'm helping you to go through and make sure that you have your important documents, your medical directives, just the important papers, some of the legal things, your will, your attorney, and so forth. And then honoring the body after death is that how do you want your body to be in disposition? So are you going to have a burial? Is there going to be cremation? Those are some of the common ideas that people have about that. But people don't really realize that honoring the body after death is a part of beginning the grieving process for those that are left behind. And so we can sometimes help to develop anointings that invites the family into touching and talking to the person after death, and just beginning that opening, and feeling that this is a normal part of life and you're a part of it. I hope I've explained that. And if you have any questions, you remember to have, either send those in or just hold them for me. Then the certified end-of-life doula, that's the second certification. And a doula is a person who assists in the dying process of another person by providing comfort, care, calmness, and support. And that's accomplished by being at bedside with someone in their dying, accompanying the family, guiding, helping the family to understand the process of death, what's happening, trying to help coordinate any questions or needs that they might have if hospice is involved. There's just a plethora of things that can be done. If you can think of it and we can talk about it, then my hope is that I help you to accomplish that. A doula, I want to tell you, is not a person that is medically trained. A doula is not does not prescribe medication, nor do they give medication to anyone. So that is not a part of what I would be there or a doula would be there to do. But we're trained to be stewards of death so that everyone has a good death, and that no one dies alone, so that no one has to be alone in their dying. So some of these things that we're talking about, I keep bringing up the word death and I keep talking about it. And I want to invite us to look at some information that might be surprising to you about yourself and others around you. And this slide is called Why Talking Matters. And I got this from the Conversation Project National Survey, and this was in 2018. And so this is a part of a program called the Conversation Project. And I have that listed in the resources for you at the end of our time today. But if you'll look at this, it says 92% of people say that talking with loved ones about end-of-life care is important. 92%, but only 32% actually have done this. And then the next one is that 21% of people say they haven't had the conversation because they don't want to upset their loved ones. But then if we look, it says 53% say they'd be relieved if a loved one started the conversation. And then the last one I want to bring to your attention is 95% say they are willing or want to talk about their end-of-life wishes. Do you find yourself in any of these? Do you feel like either you've held back because you don't want to upset another person, but you really long to talk about it, or you've begun to have thoughts about it? You're not alone. This is the way that we are seeing in our society, that it can be a taboo subject, and it doesn't have to be. And we want to be the game changers. Let's talk today and see if we can begin to make a difference in our own lives and those that we love, so that we can begin to talk, because communication is key. And remember that you having the conversation with yourself first is going to enable you to have the conversation with someone else. So if you're thinking about it, then you're doing your work, and then you can invite others into that with you. I want to share with you my first experience with death. And this was my grandmother, Stella. This was my father's mother. And she died of a heart attack when I was in the 5th grade. So this was the first person that I experienced their dying. And what I'd like to invite you into today is a time of a breakout room so that you can share your experiences and remembrances of your experience with death that you can share with one another. And I want you just to remember that as we go into this breakout room, that we're just listening to one another. We're not fixing anything for one another. We're just listening with our hearts to listen to someone else's story. And I'd like to suggest that when you get in your breakout room, that the first person that shares, so we can not avoid that time, is start with the person whose birthday is closest to January and then move forward in that way. Does everybody understand that? And then the purpose of this is to share your first experience or remembrance of death with your friends now that will be in the breakout room. We'll come back together, and we're thinking that it'll be 8 to 10 minutes that we'll spend in the breakout room. So please feel free to share and know that this is helping you and others to begin to open up in conversation.
Welcome back, everyone. I suspect that you feel like you didn't have quite enough time to have some of these big conversations. So it just wound up being a little bit of a teaser, just a chance to get that ball rolling and hopefully prime the pump, as it were. We'll take just a couple minutes right now. We do because we of course have limited time, so we won't take the time to hear from everyone. But if a couple of you would like to jump in and just share something that was meaningful for you about that conversation, we would welcome that just here in the next minute or two. Just remember to unmute yourself.
I'll just ask you, was it hard to recall? Did something come instantly to you, or did you really just have to think about it? Because, sometimes we block some of these things out.
This is Cindy, and I recalled the time when my father passed away. That was my first death experience, really, with a close family member. And I was a teenager in high school getting ready to graduate, and he was 49 and very young, died of cancer. And I did not realize until recently, when my brother and I were talking about this, that I didn't have any recall of my life from the time he left our house and went to the hospital the last time until his funeral, which was probably, 2 or 3 weeks, that I have no recall of that time. My brother was talking about things that happened during that time, and I said, I don't remember any of that. And I just think that it's amazing how our minds work and how God uses his power to help us deal with some of these things. I just emotionally couldn't have handled it, I don't think, any other way. And it was just amazing. I never knew that all these years, that I didn't even recall several weeks of my life. And I'm just thankful. And thankfully, my family is Christian and we believe in life after death. And so I know that we'll be reunited one day. So I do have that peace to look forward to, and I'm thankful that we can talk about death in our family.
Good. Thank you.
My first experience with death was my grandmother, and which I shared with the group, and I was not allowed to go in her room at the time she was transitioning. And then with all my other experiences, it really became clear how important it is to be in touch with people as they die, not only for the survivor, but also having been close to death myself once, how important it was to have connections with people and some completion in case I'd gone on over. So anyway, I think Kim is really presenting something that's important, is to do it consciously.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Cameron.
Just in general, from our group, it was interesting to hear that we seem to remember experiences from when we were young. And I've encountered people in my life that actually are very uncomfortable going to funerals and even being in the presence of, someone that's passed, because it's been not part of their experience and they haven't been talked to about it, it would appear. And so I think what you're bringing here, Kim, about talking about it is so important to take the fear out of it. So I find that helpful.
Thank you. I'm glad.
Really appreciate these sharings that really bring it down to real life. And we're going to go ahead and move forward here so we have a chance to hear everything from Kim, and we have a little bit of time left at the end. We'll open it back up for that.
Thank you. Well, you know that, can everybody hear me again?
Yes.
We're all good? Okay. So we want to make sure everybody's on mute right now in case a dog's barking or an airplane flies over. So good. One of the things that I find commonly is fear. Sometimes even people are afraid to talk about it because they're afraid that they'll manifest it. And so that's another thing that brings up fear in others and stops the conversation as well. Also, I just wanted to mention that fear of death is cyclical in that we learn it from someone else. We see their response, and then we respond this way as well. It's kind of like, why do we cut the end of the roast or the ham off to put it in the pan? Because the pan wasn't big enough, but you've got a big enough pan to put that roast in and you don't have to cut it off. So, just know that there are different ways of dealing with things. There are more options for us. There are more freedoms for us in having these conversations. It doesn't have to be that we go to a funeral home or we have a burial vault or a hearse, because those are all things that are in our time that in which we are living in. And we want to ask, why do we do it this way? Not that it's wrong, but that you know that there are options, that there are other ways, other choices that you have that you might desire for yourself and for your family. So a word that comes up is autonomy. With this from Altu Gawande, from his book Being Mortal, he brings up this point about autonomy. He says, you may not control life's circumstances, but getting to be the author of your life means to control what you do with them. And this is very important for us, to be the author of our own stories, to have that autonomy or that agency, that control. It's not trying to be a control freak. It's just, what is it that I want? What is it that I desire? What is it that is most meaningful to me? And here I think that we have an invitation to listen for with this. How can I look at what I believe are my goals or my longings for my living so that I take them into my dying? Listen for that invitation throughout the rest of the program today. I'd like for us to just take a few minutes to practice a spiritual practice called the 3 breaths. And a spiritual practice is any intentional practice done with the goal of cultivating attentiveness to God and what the Holy Spirit wants to do in and around you. And it invites us, a practice invites us to come back again and again. And its its purpose is not perfection. It's just to practice, to continue to experience it. So let's sit back in our chairs and unbrace. We've been talking about some things that can cause stress. So let's listen. And this is from the Second Breath app. And Second Breath is a program here in Greensboro, and they have a beautiful app and courses that are available. And this is Greg Farron that is going to be reading the practice for us. So if you'll sit back, you can close your eyes or turn your screen off, whatever you feel comfortable with, but we're going to take this time.
3 deep breaths. In a comfortable seated position, allow your body to relax and sink in the chair. Soften your gaze or close your eyes. And now take a deep breath, all the way from the bottom of your belly to the top of your chest. And as you exhale, consciously let go of the past. Let the residue and dust of the day blow away. Whatever tension, fatigue, or preoccupation you may be carrying with you is now floating away. Now take a second deep breath and arrive more fully in this present moment, knowing that this present moment is the only moment you have to truly live. Feel the weight of your body in the chair, your feet on the floor. And now take a third deep breath. As your chest expands, picture your heart opening to receive whatever gift it is that God has to give you in this unique time and space. Bring your awareness to your body. Take a few moments to pay attention to your breathing. All day long, your body breathes for you, taking care of you without you even being aware of it. Simply paying attention to your breathing usually will naturally tend to deepen it slightly. Let the weight of your body relax into the chair. Bring your attention to your hips and gently let go to sink more deeply into your seated posture. Now allow your attention to come up to your chest area. And allow this area of your body to release or soften. Sense the opening of your heart space. And now relax your shoulders. Let your arms fall easily to your side. As you breathe, relax the muscles of your neck and throat. Relax your jaw, where most of us tend to hold a lot of tension. Relax your eyes and the muscles around your eyes. Smooth out your forehead, your cheeks, all the small muscles of the face down to and including your chin. Relax your ears and the entire scalp. And as you continue to breathe, just be simply and quietly present. Present to this place, present to yourself, your experience, your life, present to this moment, the fullness of the here and now, and present to the divine presence in whom we are resting, living, moving, and having our being. Open your awareness to this divine presence that is with and within. This loving presence is closer than your thoughts, closer than your breath. And in this awareness, slowly open your eyes.
Thank you for joining me in that spiritual practice of 3 breaths. We're going to take a bio break for about 5 minutes, so you can go get something to drink or use the bathroom. So take a break and then come back. And if you want to just leave yourself on mute for right now, and we'll see you back in 5 minutes. Okay, so let's move on then to finitude, a word that has come up for me in this work. And finitude is the state of having a limit or end, finite or limitlessness. Finitude is not something that we think about every day. Most of us don't. And we're thinking that we will just go on and on forever, but nothing does, particularly physical here on this earth. So we do have a limited ability or a limited time. And so we must recognize that. And when we fight that, when we aren't able to recognize that, that's resistance. And that's a refusal to accept that something or some action is going to happen. So resistance causes stress. Resistance to finitude causes us to have stress. No, this is never going to happen to me. I'm not ever going to get sick. I'm not ever going to do this or that. And when we're in that resistance time, it brings up desolation. That takes away our joy. That brings about hopelessness. And those things are stress related. Those are things that if we don't deal with them properly, then they will take a toll on us. The body carries these things. But we do have another alternative to finitude, to dealing with our finitude, besides resistance and desolation. We have consolation. And consolation is finding comfort or being consoled in a time of disappointment. So I would like to invite us to explore consolation. I want us to move toward consolation. And by doing that, we accept the invitation to begin to engage with our thoughts around life and death. We set our intention for this courageous examination of self, and we keep returning to it. We release fears that do not serve us well. We have wonder and curiosity about new ways of thinking and options. And most importantly, we have to stay awake in consolation. To have consolation, we can't numb ourselves or fade into the woodwork. We have to be mindful of learning about ourselves. That's what we're doing. We're learning about ourselves, getting to know ourselves better and better. I don't know if you're familiar with Thomas Merton, but Thomas Merton says this about work, like we're doing today. He says there are only 3 stages to this work: to be a beginner, to be more of a beginner, and to be only a beginner. So we all are beginning on this journey to move towards consolation, to learn about ourselves. When we do this, we find freedom. It gives us freedom, and we need to learn about ourselves. We want to identify who and what is most meaningful to us. Is it healthy relationships with family and friends? Is it the healing of a broken relationship? Is it that you want to travel and you want to go places and see things you've never seen before, but you continually put it off to another time? Do you have a bucket list? And if you do, are you already looking at it and reviewing it? Do you want to be more generous with your time and money? How do you want to use those things to make the world a better place and your life stronger and better? And do you have a talent that maybe you pushed to the side? Maybe you played a musical instrument at some point or wanted to and never did, but now you have the ability to do that. Those are some things to consider. We also want to discover what our passions are. Passions are so important, and this, Jerome, is where we want to look at our needs and desires for expressing these passions to others. And that's what this work does for me. It's a passion for me. So I identify that as a passion. Are there any regrets? We talked about that before. And the legacy. Your legacy is your fingerprint on the world, and it ripples out and it affects others. So you want to think and consider about that. Also, you want to think about your narratives. What stories have you held on in your life that may not be true? They may not have ever been true, but recreating the truest story so that you can bring peace to yourself and understanding and love and forgiveness for those maybe you have held something against because you didn't see it correctly. So it's bringing forth healing for you. I want to talk to you now about a tool called the Best 3 Months. And this is what we in Conscious Dying Institute training, they call the gym. And this is what the coaching part of the program is about. We're exploring in an exercise that you have only 3 months to live. And in those 3 months, we have finitude. We have a definite ending point that we know we are moving toward. And so it just kind of encapsulates where our thoughts need to be. Now, this is only an exercise. Some people feel uncomfortable with this, but it is a way in which to bring more of a microscopic look at your life to help you in moving forward in the way in which you want. So it's a tool of self-exploration, identifying your priorities, thinking about where you are currently in your life and where you want to be in the end. What is your vision for that, for your end of life vision? And so again, as I said earlier, we would develop concrete steps to move us from where we are currently to where we want to be, some things that will help us accomplish these things. Again, we're looking at the 5 domains of life for these questions that we would ponder together. We'll talk about finitude. We would want you to be honest and open with yourself so that you can align yourself with your truest self. We want you to have freedom to learn about yourself, discover and rediscover passions, find forgiveness for self or others. Again, the stories that are not true or that have been true and are meaningful and that you want to share. Your legacy, to increase beauty, pleasure, and contentment in your life, things that maybe you're denying yourself right now and asking yourself, why do I do that? Is my life still in the place where I can't do these things, or is my life different and I can allow myself to do more of what I love? And then the last thing is to practice self-care. How do we take care of ourselves? Maybe spiritual practices. Some people, it might be soaking in the bathtub. Some it may be allowing yourself to spend time with your children or your grandchildren, planning and doing some things that would be meaningful for you. not stressful, doing the planning ahead of time for that. I'd like for us now to look at some other priorities that we might want to consider in our work if you were working with a coach, and that what is most important to you and what will you value most at your end of life? What comforting care will you want and need? And so one of the things that we talk about is, do you want to have touch? Do you want to have massage? Do you want to have your hands place lotion on you? What are some of the things, music, what are things that are offering comfort to you? What are things that you can't live without? They're the deal breakers, things that you want to have happen, or people that you want there, or maybe people that you don't want in your presence at that time. And who do you want to help you fulfill the priorities that you come up with? Is it your family, your friends, doctors, your mentors, or maybe even clergy? But we would be identifying these priorities. We want to observe within ourselves habits, some different habits that we want to invest our time in. And if we could move on to the next slide. So we're going to develop some habits of radical simplicity. Simplicity helps to relieve stress in our lives, making it simple. Experiencing the yielding of our agenda, doing what we think we're supposed to do as opposed to what we would like to do or what we desire to do. Again, during this time of work, we want to embrace the uncomfortable. Again, we have to come back again and again to these things that we know that we can walk away, but we can come back. Walk away and come back. We have to develop the ability to endure things. Sometimes everything's just not always easy. We need to be present in the moment. That's what some of our spiritual practices help us to do. Those are very important. Be aware of our resistance. And when we see these things in ourselves, let's not judge ourselves. Let's just take note of the things that arise, and then know that we come back and begin again and again. That's loving ourselves. That's self-care, not being hard on ourselves. So because of the time that we spent together today, I'd like for you to think about this for after the workshop today, is to set an intention for yourself, to engage with your fears and to identify your limits. How is life changing? Are there health issues? Are there things that are we have to modify our life around? But be honest and think of those things, and how can we move around them sometimes instead of not doing things at all? Understanding our finitude, incorporating silence and solitude in our day each day is important for us as we're doing this work. Reflect and journal your thoughts from today. Spend some time with what's happening today, what has come up for you. Have a conversation with yourself, and then think about who you would like to have the conversation with. People that your family that you need to be around you. And who is the right person to have this conversation with? And then finally, ask yourself, do I desire to explore and engage the deeper questions? I know there's a lot of repetition in this, but we just have to keep thinking about our own thoughts. We have to move, we have to move ourselves forward in this in order for it to be healthy, to be consolation in our life. I'd like to invite us now to another breakout room. And what I'd like for you to do at this point is to think about what has resonated from what has been shared with you today. What has challenged your thinking around the topic of conscious dying and conscious living? So, what has resonated or challenged you as I've spoken with you today? And we're thinking about 8 to 10 minutes again.
Our session was a lot of fun. We talked about, what's important to each of us, and a bit of irreverence. And I think it helped each of us maybe to focus on priorities for ourselves.
Good work, Patricia. And it can be fun talking about this. So it's not without its humor.
We talked about some practical things like decluttering so that wouldn't be left to someone else. And around legacy, just recording snippets of thoughts and stories that we would want to share, or maybe faith thoughts or part of our faith journey. And just talking about that was helpful to me, because I think about wanting to leave a document like that, but it seems so daunting when if I would just write little stories as I thought them or I think of them, then that wouldn't be overwhelming. So that was a fun conversation.
Good.
Good. One more?
I was wondering if Anna would share what she had spoken before the group came back about getting to know herself. Would you share that, Anna?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
I think what really struck me, and it was a bit surprising, was what was brought up about getting to know myself. Turn my volume up a little. And I know myself pretty well, but I was really surprised to find that I'm not sure I really know what's important to me as far as death, but also not just that, but how that impacts how I'm living now. Like there's a continuity there. So it's really important. This isn't just something I'm looking at for whenever. It's a part of who I am now. And I hadn't quite looked at it like that. We put death as something so far off. Our culture doesn't want to deal with it. It's not integrated into life. And I just realized I have a lot of thinking to do. I've already started this conversation with my kids, and it's been all the things on that list. They don't want to hear it. They do want to have the conversation. It's incredibly awkward. But we keep having the conversations. And I think that conversation would be more meaningful if I understand myself better and what I want. And not just for that, but what I want for my life now, for the rest of my life. Super, super important, and way more challenging than I ever expected. I didn't expect to walk away with that. So, thank you.
Yes.
We do thank you.
Mm-hmm. I'd like to share with you something that we are given in our program, our class with Conscious Dying Institute. This was written by Taryn Estes, who was the founder of Conscious Dying Institute. And it's a challenge to us to practice for death every day. She challenges us to read this every day. So I'd like to share that with you. I return to God. I release my body to the earth. I retrieve my energy from all worldly things. I relax into the source of my being. Death is my teacher. I have prepared for this moment all of my life. All teachings converge for this departure. The truth of impermanence envelops me. I am free from suffering. I release my spirit to the light. I am forgiven. My work is done. I return to the light. And so, as I said, she challenges us to think about this every day. And this is looking at our finitude once again, and bringing death into, as Anna said, a part of life, because it is for each one of us. It is going to be a part of our lives. So I just wanted to share that with you. And maybe you might find something, a poem or something that speaks to you, that just kind of helps you to think about life and death in this way. I would like to share with you, as a kind of a sidebar, about one of my other passions that came about because of the work with the Conscious Dying Institute. And this is the language of flowers and tussie mussies. And I just love flowers. I love learning about them. And one of the things that I came across as I was reading about essential oils and flowers and so forth during some of our assignments, I came across the word tussie mussie. And I thought, well, what is that? And so my curiosity was to look it up. And then I began reading about it. And a tussie mussie, the word tussie means a bunch or gathering of flowers, usually small in size. So we're kind of thinking about a nosegay. And the mussie is the moss wrapped around the flower stems that holds in the moisture. So it's flowers, a small nosegay of flowers that can be carried. And this comes from the Victorian era, where bouquets or nosegays were carried by young girls, because girls did not wear jewelry. But it was more appropriate for them to carry flowers. And then let me go back just a little further. During the plague, people would carry herbs and spices around so that they did not have to smell the decay of death during the plague. And so these things all kind of interrelate with each other. So that's a little history there for you. But during the Victorian time, people would send messages with their flowers. And they might send a secret lover might send a message, and it would be a combination of flowers that would tell the person that there's love, or that you are gentle and you are kind, whatever. And so I began to study the language of flowers and understanding how to combine flowers. And this is called composing. So you are composing a message with flowers. You can, if you look at the one on your screen, that's the larger one. This is one that I composed for someone whose wife died. And I wanted to just share a little bit about it. You can see the flowers that are in this nosegay. Each one of these has a meaning or a characteristics of the person, this man's wife. And so just share a little bit that the zinnias that you see, the pink flowers there, are thoughts of an absent friend. And that was his wife that we were saying was the absent friend. You'll see a stick of cinnamon and a red rose in there. And that is loving and thoughtful, that she was loving and thoughtful. The oak leaf, if you can see that down at the lower bottom of the screen, is longevity of marriage. And that was a 42-year marriage. So that's what the oak leaf represents. The marigolds represent constancy and endurance of love and joy, that she was a daughter, she was a wife, a sister, a mother, an aunt, and a great aunt. The goldenrod and the lamb's ear is encouraging and supportive, that she was not only to her family, but to abundance of her friends. And I can just go on, but each one of those describes something about the person that they have lost. And so I leave the bouquet or the tussy mussy, or I might leave a talking bouquet. That would be a larger arrangement of flowers. But as I give these to people, it opens the floodgates for them to tell me memories or things that have happened in their lives, or they may tell me something that they've never told anybody else about the situation of the dying of the person. Like, I haven't told my children this, and that people are telling me things. So it just really opens people up. They're left with the flowers. They're left with a written message. I explain the meaning of the flower and relate it to the person and leave that with them. So I view this as a way of opening up healing, beginning the healing, the grieving process for the person that I'm giving this to. And so I make these and at request as well. So I just love the opportunity, and I especially love it that I can find most of these things in my yard or my neighbor's yards or somewhere out in the fields near my house. So if I have a journal of where I can find all these things. So that's probably enough about that. But I just wanted to share that with you, that it's a beautiful practice that brings me joy and is a passion. And that will lead me into telling you about what is my practice. My practice is called Spa-Yay. And Spa-Yay is a term when translated to trellis. And this just stands out to me. It just speaks so of my story, the way that I want to approach this work with other people. And I'd like for you to look at the picture with me, that there's an earthen vessel, and the earthen vessel is you or me. It's our personality. It's who we choose to live our lives out. So it's us, the vessel is. Inside that vessel is soil. And soil is made up of inorganic particles and organic matter. And these provide anchorage for roots. They hold water and nutrition. And for us, it's the soil represents life support. It's a life support system for us. The soil is alive and teeming with life. Then you'll see the 5 rods. And the 5 rods represent the 5 domains of life that I've talked about throughout our time together today. So they represent something to climb. And what is climbing is the blue morning glory. And the blue morning glory represents or symbolizes the fleeting nature of life. A morning glory blooms in the morning, and at the end of the day, it dies. So it represents a cycle of life and the brevity of life. The color blue of the morning glory represents respect and the faith you have in someone and how you are there for someone no matter what. The vine itself, with its heart-shaped leaves, represents resilience and stubbornness, because a vine will grow where a vine wants to grow. And so with this work, we want to help our vine by trimming it, by pruning it, by redirecting it. We want to compare our life to this vine and bringing it into its full beauty by growing up this trellis and following the path. And then at the top of the 5 rods is a circle that holds the 5 rods together. And this represents the divine or spirit that keeps reality in motion. Circles have no beginning or end, and they represent life and the life cycle. So this is just really important to me to share with you, as you can see how I see my work that I want to do with others and help to guide them and help them in their lives. And again, it's pronounced Spaye. That's going to be a fun thing for people to remember. So I'd like to just to invite you now, as we come to a close, I'd like to invite you to feel comfortable to speak your own truth in love. And the people that are here on the screen with me are on the top left is my mother-in-law, Pat, Bruce's mom, my husband's mom, that we worked to care for about 2 years. She moved here from Michigan and lived with us, and then lived in a facility here in Greensboro. And below that are my parents, Margaret and Eddie White, which they walked with them. And then to the far right is a friend from Asheville that taught me about a healthy death, healthy communications with family members and planning, even before I even knew it was something that I would want to help others to do. And her name was Judy. But I just want you to know that the work that you're going to do, learning about yourself, is a gift of love. It's a gift that you give to yourself and the love that you give to your family. When you set your priorities and healthy boundaries, you're growing. You're allowing for more living in the present. As Anna said earlier, it applies to life now, moving forward. It's not just at the end, it's how we want to live now. It's going to help you to be able to inform others. It's going to break some of those cyclical fears that you have and understand why you have them and release them if you would like to. And I want you to, most of all, to find beauty in a life well lived in order that you may die well. And that's consciousness. And I want you to know that your death is a teacher. Your death will prepare others and teach them that death is not something to be feared, but that is something that is a gift that you give them, and preparing them and changing the way they may think about death, allowing them to be open to it as well. So I really just want to thank you so much for staying around and being a part of this. And I think we would like to see if you have any questions or comments that you would like to share. And by the way, this is a talking bouquet. Just so you can see a bouquet instead of a tussy mussy. So Jerome, I'll give it back to you.
Great. Thank you so much, Kim.
Mm-hmm.
We've got a couple of questions that have come in so far.
Mm-hmm.
Laurie is asking about the relationship between the work that you do as a doula and end-of-life coach and how that connects with the ministry of hospice.
Mm-hmm. I would say there are a lot of similarities between that, because we're both working towards having a positive end of life. One of the things that I have learned through some of the work with some of my friends, thank you for going full screen, is from one of the ladies that's here today, Wanda Barnes, is a retired hospice nurse. And one of the things that she's helped us to learn is that it allows for us to have more time with a person if we're involved in another person, in a client. I'll call this a client's life. Then we are not held by a schedule. We're not held by so many visits or how much time. So this allows a lot more freedom to spend with the client or the person in their dying. I think we're doing a lot of work in communications, trying to communicate between the family and the dying person as well. And we're talking about more like in the doula role. It just some kind of constancy or coordination. May I invite Wanda, if she would feel comfortable to maybe help me in answering that question. Do you have something that you could bring forth from your own experience to help expand on that?
Yes, as you said, excuse me, I'm getting over some laryngitis.
Forgot.
But it does complement what people in hospice are able to do. As Kim said, the reality of hospice care is that they carry a number of people that they have to work with, so they don't always have the time that they would like. I know as a nurse, I was always regretted that I didn't have more time to just sit and be with my patients. So this kind of fills in that, helps to fill in the gaps that sometimes can happen with that, with the social workers and with the nurses and even the chaplains. It's been my experience that sometimes people, even though a hospice chaplain is a non-denominational, they're not about religion, but people still think of them as a minister, so they refuse that service. So sometimes they don't get that spiritual support that they might be able to have. And as a doula, they may be more receptive to that. Because as Kim said, as a doula, it's a totally non-medical, so it would be that spiritual and emotional, mental, and can be physical support in a non-medical way. Mm-hmm. So I see how it can be very complementary.
Thank you, Wanda.
Yes. That's really helpful to have that particular, some clarity around those relationships. Anna has asked a question about some of the things that we begin to explore in end-of-life discovery. Might include being with people or travel or other things that may be impinged upon by the season of COVID. And you may want to flesh that out a little bit more, Anna, feel free. But maybe you could speak, Kim, to how do we manage end of life when we don't have all the options open to us that we might prefer?
Mm-hmm. Well, COVID has certainly changed the way some of these things have been done, but we've also learned that we have options. And sometimes through all of COVID, we have learned that Zoom calls are very connective in talking to other people. I have, for example, the other day, one of our classmates had the ability through even a phone call to help someone walk through the death of their parent, by phone. I'm not sure if that's what Anna's asking about, but there are lots of ways in which we can connect with one another. If you're thinking about communicating with family members that you're not close to, you could write letters. You can write out your thoughts and share them, in that way with others. Could you give me a little help about what exactly you're wanting to know? I'm not sure I'm hitting what you're curious about.
Well, what you're saying is helpful. I'm not sure I can express it too much more. I think some of it is dealing with the end of life issues now. My children, I have 6 children and they're scattered all over the country. Mm-hmm. Some of them are avidly against vaccinations, and so we haven't been able to get together. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of stuff to work through that we've not been able to have conversations about things because it's become extremely polarizing, mm-hmm. which has been very surprising. I never anticipated that. So it's added a level of complication to just having meaningful conversations about difficult things, mm-hmm. In general. And, so some of it is not being able to have those face-to-face conversations. And I know there's not really a solution to that other than Zoom. But it's just layered a level of complexity to all of this, mm-hmm. that I think everybody is living with. So navigating it like now is hard. And some of the things as far as getting to know myself, what I'm able to do and want to do and all that kind of thing, I can't necessarily do that. You know, I'm high risk for COVID complications because of some medical issues. So I'm still stay pretty locked down. So my whole world is much more limited than it was.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, the whole thing of looking at options is really important, but it's hard. There's a lot of grief that everybody is dealing with now in general. It just, in some ways it's made the issues more real, but it's also made them harder because it's so prevalent. Everybody's struggling so much wherever they are in all of this, that to deal directly with death, a lot of people just can't go there. Mm-hmm. So it's complicated. It's just a reality that's part of this situation that I need to integrate into all of this. Mm-hmm. Hopefully that makes some sense.
Yeah, and I think.
Excuse me.
Oh, go ahead.
I just had a sort of an ugly story to tell on that very point. I read an obituary about 2 years ago that was about a woman who passed away, and her family was with her. And the obituary went on to say, except for one of the daughters who was at an important marketing meeting in Cancun and was not present when the parent died. The next sentence read, the former heiress finally returned to the area. So there are feelings around all of that, and people make choices, and we can't necessarily control them. And I have a daughter that's estranged from me for a lot of weird reasons. And, you know, I just have to live with that. And maybe I'll see her and have closure, maybe I won't. But she's chosen her path, and I bless that. I admire her independence. So, you know, these things are difficult sometimes, and we just have to accept them, bless them, ask for their resolution, and yet live our life.
Thank you. Thank you, Cameron. Yeah. I was just going to say, I'll kind of tag on to that your work of getting to know who you are, that's your work to do, and to share that with them, because it's about you. It's about you. It's not about them. It's about you. What you want, what you need, for you to express that to them. And then what they do with that is theirs to do.
Kim, we have a question that's come in from Patricia, who's asking if an end-of-life doula, if part of their work is helping someone die with dignity in the context of a terminal illness. So when you know someone's they're ill, they're going to die, they're not going to recover, is that part of your work?
Right. And that's a part of grieving. There's a grieving process that's ongoing throughout that time period, not only for the person themselves, but for their family. So that's what a doula is there to do. A doula is there to be the voice of the person. You know, we've spent time, hopefully we will have spent time together before that. Maybe we will have done some form of the best 3 months, and we'll know what it is that is most important to them. And then my responsibility is to be the voice. My responsibility is to see that things happen the way that you want them to happen. Because you have already stated those things. Is that answering the question that I'm being asked? I just want to make sure.
It is. It's a little vague. What I'm asking actually is, if a person chooses to say go to Oregon and end their life because of the suffering that may be ahead of them, or their mental capacity is diminishing to the point where, it's going to be a long drawn out, and who knows what goes on in a person's mind with Alzheimer's or dementia, to stop that.
So you're asking me if they're making that choice, is a doula a part of that accompaniment? Is that what you're asking me, Patricia?
I guess to support that decision, if that's a decision an individual wants to make.
The role of the doula is to be neutral and to carry their own beliefs as well as the other person's beliefs. And I think that if a doula is comfortable with taking that role, then he or she should do that. We recently been talking about something that's called VSED, and that's voluntary stop eating and drinking to bring upon a hurried death. And so it's something that a person has the option to do, just as you said, to travel to Oregon. And the doula or the end-of-life specialist can choose to be a part of that, to be invited in to that, if they so choose to take that opportunity.
Thank you.
These are some challenging questions. We've got time for maybe one more question before we wrap up for today. So if you'd like to just unmute and fire away.
So if someone was interested in actually using a doula for this process, how does one go about doing that?
There are directories that you can find. You can go to Conscious Dying Institute. That's one. Well, there's me and there's Wanda right here on this call. But you can just look up death doulas. And thank you. The reference page there that you can see the information for Conscious Dying Institute, but there are many out there that you can just Google in that way.
Okay, thank you.
Does that help you, Anna?
Yeah, and I think it's a question that others may be thinking as well. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you'd like to take a moment to jot down any of these locations of resources from this page, feel free. Also, if you would just like to have me send you the slide or even the entire slide deck, feel free to reach out to me or directly to Kim. I know she would welcome any follow-up, and her phone number and email are here on this page. So we're just really delighted that you chose to share this space with us today and really enter into the meaningful conversation around death and what it means to live consciously in the light of our mortality, and how to not, we have options besides just not thinking about it and not talking about it. We have many other ways, healthier ways, much more meaningful ways to leave a legacy intentionally and not by accident. So this is just a fantastic resource. I hope you'll continue to keep Kim in mind as we move forward. Like I said, I'm going to try to get this up on our website over the next few weeks so that can be a resource that you share with others who aren't able to be here today.
You can also screenshot it.
There you go.
Yeah, I screenshot a lot.
Thank you, Bridget.
Uh-huh.
Excellent.
Well, I want to just say this has been very meaningful for me. And, I'm going through a life transition. And so all of this applies.
Oh, wonderful.
So it's been a very special time. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Thank you for coming today.
I just want to echo that. And Kim, you are amazing. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Anything else that you want to close with, Kim, or should we just bless everyone and send them on their way?
I really just want to invite you, if you ever have questions, please feel free to call or email me. I just really want to help. I really want to be out there in the world. I want to advocate and educate people so that we can live our lives well into our deaths. So thank you so much for being here today. I just really appreciate it so much.